I walked into my own open house with a police officer beside me. My children's faces went white as sheets when they saw me standing in my living room. The living room they thought they were about to sell out from under me while I recovered from surgery. My name is Barbara Mitchell, and I'm 71 years old. Before I tell you this story, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your state or country in the comments. I always love knowing where my stories reach. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I went in for my gallbladder surgery. Nothing major, they told me. Routine procedure. I'd be home in 2 days, back to normal in a week. My daughter Jessica and my son Brandon both promised they'd check on the house while I was in the hospital. They had spare keys. They'd water my plants, bring in the mail, make sure everything was secure. I trusted them completely. Why wouldn't I? They were my children. The surgery went fine. I woke up groggy in recovery, and by evening I was in a regular hospital room, texting both kids that I was okay. Jessica sent back a heart emoji. Brandon replied, "Rest up, Mom. We've got everything handled." Those words should have warned me. I spent that night and the next day in the hospital, drifting in and out of sleep, watching terrible daytime television, eating Jell-O that tasted like plastic. The nurses were kind. My friend Dorothy came by with flowers. Everything seemed normal. Then, on Thursday afternoon, not even 48 hours after my surgery, my phone rang. The name on the screen said Patricia Holloway. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize it, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Hi, is this Barbara Mitchell?" The woman's voice was professional, warm. "Yes, this is Barbara." "Barbara, my name is Patricia Holloway. I'm a real estate agent with Riverside Realty. I'm calling because I received a rather unusual listing request for your property at 847 Maple Grove Drive, and I wanted to verify some details with you directly before moving forward." My entire body went cold despite the warm hospital room. "I'm sorry, what? A listing for my house?" There was a pause. "Yes, ma'am. Your son Brandon contacted me yesterday about listing your property for sale. He said you'd had a stroke and were moving into assisted living and the family needed to sell the house quickly. He provided what he said was a power of attorney document." I couldn't breathe. The heart monitor beside my bed started beeping faster. "Miss Holloway," I said, my voice shaking, "I have not had a stroke. I'm in the hospital for gallbladder surgery. I am not moving into assisted living, and I absolutely have not authorized anyone to sell my house." The silence on the other end of the line lasted 3 heartbeats. "Mrs. Mitchell," Patricia said slowly, "I think we need to talk. Are you able to speak right now?" "Yes," I whispered. "Please, tell me everything." Patricia Holloway's voice became very serious. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Something about this listing request felt off to me from the beginning. That's why I'm calling you." "What did my son tell you?" I asked, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "He called Tuesday evening, said you'd had a major stroke that morning and were incapacitated. He claimed you'd signed a power of attorney 6 months ago giving him and his sister authority to handle your affairs. He wanted the house listed immediately, same day if possible." Tuesday evening, the day of my surgery. While I was lying in recovery, still groggy from anesthesia, my own son was trying to sell my house. "He emailed me a copy of the power of attorney," Patricia continued. "Mrs. Mitchell, I've been in real estate for 23 years. I've seen hundreds of legitimate POA documents. This one looked wrong. The formatting was off. There were spelling errors, and frankly, the timing was suspicious. Why would someone with a valid POA wait until the exact day of a medical emergency to suddenly list a property?" "What did you do?" I asked. I told him I needed to verify some information before proceeding. I said I'd call him back in 24 hours. Then I did what I always do when something feels wrong. I looked up the property owner's information and called you directly. Thank God for Patricia Holloway's instincts. "Can you send me a copy of that document?" I asked. "I can, but Mrs. Mitchell, if what you're telling me is true, you need to involve the police. This isn't just a family disagreement. If your son forged a legal document to fraudulently sell your property, that's a serious crime." My mind was racing. Brandon. My baby boy who I'd rocked to sleep, who I'd helped through college, who'd cried at his father's funeral and promised he'd always take care of me. That Brandon was trying to steal my house? Is my daughter involved? I had to know. Yes, Patricia said gently. Jessica called me this morning to follow up. She asked if I could schedule an open house for this weekend. She said they wanted to sell quickly because of your medical bills and the cost of your care facility. Both of them. Both of my children had conspired to do this. Mrs. Mitchell, are you all right? Should I call a nurse? I realized I was crying, silent tears running down my face in that sterile hospital room. I'm okay, I managed. Patricia, can you do me a favor? Can you tell them yes? Tell them you'll do the open house? What? Mrs. Mitchell? Please, tell them you'll list the house. Schedule the open house for Saturday afternoon. Can you do that? There was a long pause. You have a plan? I'm going to need a few days to arrange things, but yes, I have a plan. Will you help me? Patricia Holloway didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Let's catch them red-handed. After we hung up, I pressed the call button for the nurse. I had work to do. The nurse who came in found me sitting up in bed, tears still wet on my face, but my jaw set with determination. Mrs. Mitchell, what's wrong? Are you in pain? No, I said. But I need to speak with my doctor. I need to know when I can be discharged. Within an hour, Dr. Reynolds came by. I told him I was feeling much better, which was a lie. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck and needed to go home. He was hesitant, but I insisted. He finally agreed I could leave Friday morning if my vitals stayed stable. That gave me one day before the open house. Thursday evening, I made my first call. Not to Brandon or Jessica, they still thought I was incapacitated in the hospital. Probably hoped I'd be here for weeks. No, I called my friend Dorothy. Dorothy, I need your help with something, and I need you not to ask too many questions yet. Barbara, honey, what's wrong? Can you pick me up from the hospital tomorrow morning? And I need you to drive me to a lawyer's office, and then to the police station. There was silence. Then, what have your kids done? That's the thing about real friends, they know. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Can you help me? I'll be there at 9 a.m. sharp. Next, I called my lawyer, Robert Chen. Wait, not Chen. My lawyer, Robert Morrison. I'd known him for 15 years. He'd handled my husband's estate when Tom passed. I trusted him completely. Barbara, it's good to hear from you. How is the surgery? Robert, I don't have time for pleasantries. I need you to pull my will and all my estate documents. I need to know if I ever signed a power of attorney for my children. Of course you didn't. You specifically told me you didn't want to do that. You said you'd wait until you were much older and would involve all 3 of your kids together if it ever became necessary. 3 kids. Right. My youngest, Michael, lived in Seattle. He called me twice since the surgery, genuinely worried about me. I wondered if he knew what his older siblings were doing. Robert, my children are trying to sell my house using a forged power of attorney. I heard papers rustling on his end. Tell me everything. I explained the whole situation, the surgery, Patricia's call, the fake documents. Robert was silent for a long moment. Barbara, this is elder fraud. It's a felony. You need to file a police report immediately. I know, I'm going to the station tomorrow. But Robert, I want to catch them in the act. The realtor scheduled an open house for Saturday at 2 p.m. I want to walk in there with the police. That's actually brilliant. It'll be impossible for them to deny their intentions if they're actively showing your house to potential buyers. I'll prepare an affidavit for you to take to the police. And Barbara? Yes? I'm so sorry you're going through this. No parent should have to deal with this from their own children. I didn't trust myself to respond without breaking down, so I just thanked him and hung up. Friday morning, I checked myself out of the hospital against the nurse's strong recommendations. Dorothy was waiting in the lobby, her face tight with worry. Barbara, you look terrible. I feel worse, I admitted, gingerly lowering myself into her passenger seat. Every movement pulled at my surgical incisions. But this can't wait. First stop was Robert Morrison's law office. He had everything prepared. Copies of my actual estate documents proving I'd never granted power of attorney, an affidavit with his statement as my attorney, and property records showing I was the sole owner of my home with no liens or disputes. I also prepared this, Robert said, handing me another document. It's a cease and desist letter to Patricia Holloway's brokerage, officially stating that any listing of your property is fraudulent and unauthorized, but don't send it until after Saturday. I won't. I need them to go through with the open house. Robert looked at me over his reading glasses. Barbara, are you sure you're up for this? You just had surgery 2 days ago. Robert, my children are stealing my house. I'm up for whatever it takes. Next, Dorothy drove me to the police station. Walking in was harder than I'd expected. My entire midsection ached, and I felt dizzy, but I kept my spine straight. The officer at the front desk was young, maybe 30. He looked skeptical when I explained why I was there. Ma'am, are you sure this isn't just a family misunderstanding? Maybe your kids are trying to help. Officer, I interrupted, placing the stack of documents on his desk. My children told a realtor I had a stroke and was incapacitated. They forged a legal document. They are actively attempting to sell my property without my knowledge or consent while I recover from surgery. This is fraud. This is forgery. This is elder abuse. Now, can I speak with someone who handles these cases, or do I need to call the local news? His eyes widened. Let me get Detective Morrison. He stopped, glanced at my lawyer. Any relation? No, Robert said dryly, but I'm her attorney and I can assure you this is a serious criminal matter. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Detective Sarah Brennan, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed every document carefully. Patricia had emailed me the forged power of attorney, and Robert had already prepared an analysis showing how it differed from legitimate legal documents. Mrs. Mitchell, Detective Brennan said, this is definitely fraud. The document is clearly fabricated, probably from an online template, but to prove intent and build a solid case, catching them at the open house is actually an excellent idea. Will you be there, I asked. I'll be there personally. 2 p.m. tomorrow, you said? Yes. I'll arrive in an unmarked car at 1:45. Don't go in until I'm there. We'll walk in together. She paused. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask, are you certain you want to press charges against your own children? I thought about Brandon's promise to take care of me. Jessica's heart emoji while she plotted to steal my home. Absolutely certain. Friday afternoon, Dorothy insisted I stay at her house rather than going home. You need rest, and I'm not letting you be alone right now, she said firmly. I was grateful. The thought of going back to my empty house, knowing what Brandon and Jessica had planned for it, made me feel sick. That evening, my phone rang. Jessica. Mom, how are you feeling? The cheerfulness in her voice was poison. I steadied my own voice before answering. Tired, sore. The doctor says I'm healing well, though. That's wonderful. Listen, Mom, don't worry about anything at the house. Brandon and I have been checking on everything. Your plants are watered, mail is collected. You just focus on getting better. Thank you, sweetheart, I said, the word tasting like ash. You're both so good to me. Of course, Mom. We love you. Get some rest, okay? We'll come visit soon. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Dorothy brought me tea and sat beside me on her couch. That was Jessica? Yes, telling me not to worry about the house, telling me she loves me. Oh, honey. The open house is tomorrow at 2, Dorothy. Right now, my house is probably staged. They've probably cleared out some of my personal items to make it look better for buyers. They're lying to my face while actively selling my home. I showed Dorothy the listing that Patricia had sent me. There was my house, my beautiful home that Tom and I had bought 43 years ago. The place where I'd raised 3 children, celebrated holidays, grieved my husband. It was listed for $425,000. They're underpricing it, Dorothy said, reading over my shoulder. Houses in your neighborhood have been selling for over $500,000. They want a quick sale, I said. The faster it sells, the faster they get the money. What do you think they need the money for? That was the question that had haunted me all day. Brandon was a regional manager for an office supply company. Jessica was a nurse. Neither had mentioned financial troubles. Jessica's husband, Mark, had a good job in IT. Brandon's wife, Karen, was a teacher. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe they have debts I don't know about. Maybe they're just greedy. Does it matter? I suppose not. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured my children walking through my house with strangers, pointing out features, discussing offers. In my dreams, they were children again. Brandon at 7, missing his 2 front teeth. Jessica at 5, insisting on wearing her princess dress everywhere. Where had those children gone? When had they become people who could do this? Saturday morning dawned gray and cold. Dorothy made me breakfast, but I could barely eat. "You don't have to do this," she said gently. "You could just send the police. You don't have to see them." "Yes, I do. I need to look them in the eye. I need them to see me walk through that door." At 1:30 p.m., Dorothy helped me get dressed. I chose my blue sweater, the one Jessica had given me for Christmas 2 years ago, and my pearl earrings that had been Tom's gift on our 30th anniversary. "Ready?" Dorothy asked as we got in her car. "Let's go." We arrived at my house at 1:40. Detective Brennan's unmarked sedan was already parked down the street. I recognized her silhouette in the driver's seat. My house looked different somehow. The lawn had been freshly mowed. There were flowers planted by the mailbox. Flowers I hadn't planted. A large open house sign stood at the curb with an arrow pointing to my front door. "They put up a sign," I whispered, "on my property, advertising to sell my house." Dorothy squeezed my hand. "Stay strong, Barbara." Detective Brennan approached us, dressed in plain clothes. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you ready?" "I think so." "There are already several cars here. Looks like people are inside viewing the property." She paused. "This is going to be difficult. Are you absolutely certain?" I looked at my house. Through the front window, I could see people moving around, strangers, walking through my living room, probably discussing whether my home would be a good investment. "I'm certain." "All right, I'll go in first and identify myself to your children and the realtor. I want to establish control of the situation before they realize you're here. Wait exactly 2 minutes after I go in, then follow. Can you do that?" I nodded. Detective Brennan walked up my driveway and opened my front door like she owned the place. I watched her disappear inside. "Dorothy," I said, "before we go in, if you're watching this video and you found this story as shocking as I did when I lived it, please hit that subscribe button. What happens next is something I'll never forget, and I think you need to see how this ends." Dorothy checked her watch. "It's been 2 minutes." We walked up the driveway together, Dorothy supporting my arm. Each step hurt my incisions, but I barely noticed. My entire focus was on that front door. I pushed it open. My living room was full of people. A young couple examining the fireplace, an older man studying the built-in bookshelves, a woman taking photos of the crown molding. And there, in the center of it all, stood Jessica and Brandon. Patricia Holloway was with them, her face carefully neutral when she saw me. Detective Brennan stood slightly apart, her hand near her badge. The moment Jessica saw me, her face went completely white. "Mom?" Brandon turned. His mouth fell open. "What are you... You're supposed to be in the hospital." "Surprise," I said quietly. The entire room went silent. Every prospective buyer stopped what they were doing and stared. You could have heard a pin drop on my hardwood floors. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Jessica's voice was shrill, panicked. "You should be resting. We were just..." "You were just what, Jessica? Showing my house to strangers? Taking offers on the property I own? The house I specifically did not give you permission to sell." Brandon stepped forward. "Mom, you don't understand. We're doing this for you. After your stroke..." "I didn't have a stroke, Brandon. I had gallbladder surgery. And I'm standing right here, very much alert and oriented, watching you commit fraud." That's when Detective Brennan pulled out her badge. "Everyone except Mrs. Mitchell, her family, and Miss Holloway, please exit the house immediately," Detective Brennan announced, holding up her badge. "This is now an active police investigation." The prospective buyers couldn't leave fast enough. They practically tripped over each other, heading for the door. Within 30 seconds, my living room held only me, Dorothy, Patricia, Detective Brennan, and my 2 children. Brandon found his voice first. "This is ridiculous, Mom. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "is you thinking I wouldn't find out." Jessica's eyes were wide with panic. "Mom, we can explain?" "Then explain," Detective Brennan said. Explain the fraudulent power of attorney. Explain why you told Miss Holloway that your mother had a stroke and was incapacitated. Explain why you're attempting to sell property you don't own. We were trying to help, Jessica burst out. Mom, you're 71 years old. You can't take care of this big house by yourself anymore. Dad's been gone for 6 years. You need to be somewhere with support, with medical care readily available. So you decided to force me out? To lie to a realtor, forge documents, and sell my house without my knowledge while I recovered from surgery? Brandon's expression hardened. You're being unreasonable. We're your children. We're looking out for your best interests. My best interests? I felt my voice rising. Brandon, did you ask me what I wanted? Did either of you sit down with me and have a conversation about my future? Silence. No, I continued. You went behind my back. You created a fake legal document. You lied about my medical condition. You brought strangers into my home to sell it out from under me. And you did all of this while I was in a hospital bed recovering from surgery. Jessica started crying. We need the money, okay? Is that what you want to hear? Mark lost his job 3 months ago. We have credit card debt, the kid's tuition is due, and we're drowning. Brandon's been helping us, but he has his own bills. This house is sitting here worth $500,000, and you're living in it alone. It's not fair. There it was. The truth, finally. So you thought you'd steal it, I said softly. You thought you'd sell my home, my memories, everything your father and I built together because you have debt. We were going to use the money to get you into a nice facility, Brandon said, but his voice lacked conviction. You'd be taken care of. How much of the sale price was actually going to my care, I asked. Be honest, Brandon. For once in this entire nightmare, be honest with me. Fez. He couldn't meet my eyes. Neither could Jessica. Detective Brennan stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, Miss Reynolds, I need you to understand the serious nature of what you've done. You've committed forgery, fraud, and attempted theft. These are felonies. You're looking at substantial prison time. Prison, Jessica whispered. You're going to send us to prison, Mom? I looked at my daughter, my firstborn, the baby girl I'd rocked through countless nights, whose hand I'd held on her first day of school. You were going to steal my house, I said. What did you think would happen? Brandon suddenly became aggressive. This is insane. We're your children. Family doesn't send family to jail over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, Detective Brennan said firmly. This is premeditated fraud. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to get formal statements from everyone. Mr. Mitchell, Miss Reynolds, I'm going to need you to come down to the station. We're not going anywhere without a lawyer, Brandon said. That's your right, but understand that this investigation is happening whether you cooperate or not. We have the forged document, we have recorded conversations with Miss Holloway, we have the listing itself as evidence. You were caught in the act of attempting to sell property through fraudulent means. Jessica turned to Patricia. You set us up. You called our mother. I did my job, Patricia said calmly. When a listing seems fraudulent, I verify it with the property owner. That's what any ethical realtor would do. Mr. Mitchell, Detective Brennan continued, can you tell me where you obtained the power of attorney document? Brandon crossed his arms. I'm not saying anything without a lawyer. Then let me tell you what we already know. You downloaded a template from a legal forms website. We can trace that. You filled in your mother's information, forged her signature, and presented it as legitimate. You then contacted Miss Holloway and created a false medical narrative about your mother's condition. I watched my son's face as the detective spoke. He still looked angry, defiant even. No remorse, no shame, just fury at being caught. Jessica, I said quietly, do you even understand what you've done to me? She was still crying. Mom, please. Think about what this will do to our family. My kids, your grandchildren. What happens to them if I go to jail? Katie is only 12. Dylan is 9. They need their mother. It was emotional manipulation, and we both knew it. But it still hurt. What about my needs, Jessica? What about my home, my security? Did you think about that when you were planning this? We thought you'd never find out, she sobbed. We thought you'd be in the hospital longer, and then in recovery. And by the time you knew the house had sold, it would be done. We were going to tell you we'd found a beautiful assisted living place, all paid for, with gardens and activities. You'd have been happy there, Mom. You were going to trap me, take away my choice, Force me into a facility I didn't choose because you'd already stolen and spent my money. Dorothy spoke for the first time. Barbara, maybe you should sit down. You're still recovering. She was right. I was feeling lightheaded, my surgical site throbbing, but I couldn't show weakness now. Detective, I said, what happens next? I'll need you to come to the station to give a formal statement. Your children will need to be interviewed separately. Miss Holloway will need to provide her testimony and all documents. Then the DA will decide on charges. What kind of charges? I asked. Elder fraud, forgery, attempted theft through deception, potentially conspiracy. There's serious felonies in this state. She looked at Brandon and Jessica. You're both looking at 2 to 5 years per charge. Jessica's knees buckled. She grabbed the back of my couch to steady herself. Mom, please, Jessica begged. Please don't do this. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we're family. We can work this out. I'll pay you back somehow. Pay me back. I felt something break inside me. Jessica, you can't pay back trust. You can't reimburse betrayal. You tried to steal my entire life. We're sorry, she cried. We're so sorry. Please, Mom, please. Brandon still wasn't apologizing. This is ridiculous. No jury will convict us. We're your children trying to help you. You're being vindictive and... Brandon Michael Mitchell, I said, using his full name like I hadn't since he was a child. Stop talking. Every word out of your mouth makes this worse. Detective Brennan was making notes on her phone. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand this is emotional. If you need a moment... I don't need a moment. I need this to be over. I looked at my children. Really looked at them. Did you even consider calling Michael? Your brother? Did you think about including him in this scheme? They exchanged glances. Brandon spoke. Michael would never have agreed. He's too... idealistic. You mean he's honest, I said. He's ethical. He's not a thief. Don't put Michael on a pedestal, Jessica snapped, her grief turning to anger. He's easy to be ethical when you're not struggling. He makes 6 figures in Seattle. He doesn't have our problems. So that justifies this? I'm not saying it justifies it. I'm saying you don't understand the pressure we're under. Then you should have asked me for help. My voice rose, pain shooting through my abdomen. You should have come to me honestly, told me about your problems, and we could have figured something out together. Instead, you chose to commit crimes against your own mother. The room fell silent except for Jessica's sobbing. Patricia Holloway cleared her throat. Mrs. Mitchell, I want you to know that I've already contacted my broker. The listing has been removed. I've also documented everything for my records. I'll testify to whatever the court needs. Thank you, Patricia. You saved me from losing everything. I'm just glad I trusted my instincts. Detective Brennan looked at Brandon and Jessica. I need you both to come with me to the station. Now, you can call a lawyer from there. Mrs. Mitchell, you should go home and rest. We can take your full statement on Monday. I want to give my statement today, I said. While it's fresh, while I can still do this without breaking down. All right, you can follow me to the station. As Detective Brennan led my children toward the door, Jessica turned back one last time. Mom, I love you. I know you don't believe it right now, but I do love you. I wanted to say I loved her too. The words were automatic, trained into me by decades of motherhood, but they stuck in my throat. I loved you enough to trust you with my house keys, I said instead. You loved me enough to steal my house. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then they were gone. Led out of my house by a police detective, my 2 oldest children who I'd given everything to. Dorothy put her arm around me. Let's get you sitting down before you fall down. The legal process took 3 months. 3 months of statements, evidence gathering, court dates, and meetings with the district attorney. Michael flew in from Seattle the day after I told him what happened. He was horrified, heartbroken, and furious with his siblings. Mom, if you'd called me, if you'd ever hinted you needed money, I would have helped. You know that, right? I did know. My youngest had always been my most thoughtful child. Brandon and Jessica both hired lawyers. Their attorneys tried to frame it as a misguided attempt to help me, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged document, the recorded conversations with Patricia, the listing itself, the open house with potential buyers, their own admissions at my house that day. The DA offered them a plea deal. Plead guilty to reduce charges, accept probation, pay restitution, and serve community service. The alternative was trial and potential prison time. They took the deal. The hearing was brief. I sat in the courtroom and watched my children stand before a judge and admit their guilt. Jessica cried through the entire thing. Brandon's jaw was tight, his eyes hard with resentment. The judge ordered them to pay me $25,000 each in restitution for emotional distress, legal fees, and damages. They were each sentenced to 3 years of supervised probation and 500 hours of community service. They were also ordered to have no contact with me unless I initiated it. "Do you understand the terms?" the judge asked them. "Yes, Your Honor," they both mumbled. "What you did to your mother," the judge said, "is unconscionable. Elder fraud is a serious crime, and it's particularly heinous when committed by one's own children. You violated her trust in the worst possible way. You should be ashamed." I didn't feel triumphant watching them accept their sentence. I just felt tired. After the hearing, Michael took me to lunch. "How are you doing, Mom?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I won. I kept my house. They're being punished. But I don't feel like I won anything." "You lost your relationship with 2 of your children." "I lost it the moment they decided to forge that document. I just didn't know it yet. I still live in my house. Dorothy checks on me daily. Michael calls twice a week. I've made my will crystal clear. Everything is divided equally among all 3 children, but it's locked in a trust they can't access until specific conditions are met, all overseen by Robert Morrison. Jessica sent me a letter 6 months after the hearing. She apologized, said she understood if I never forgave her, asked if she could bring the kids by to see me. I said yes to the grandchildren, no to her. Brandon has never reached out. I don't expect he will. Sukkah. People ask me if I regret pressing charges. The answer is no. They didn't just try to steal my house. They tried to steal my autonomy, my dignity, my right to decide my own future. That's not something I can forgive, even from my own children. My house is still mine. My life is still mine. And that's all the justice I needed.